one of the most important takes we do every prayer breakfast, and that is a presentation of the word. And our preacher is known for his dynamic, elaborative preachings, but I've told him we've had a lot to do it now, and he's going to come and share the word. Dr. Mamusha Fanta, a dear brother in the Lord, who has been a blessing to us in this nation, across the continent and the world. Welcome, Dr. Mamusha. God bless you.
It's just a great honor and a very humbling experience to share the Word of God this morning with great people like you, but I just thank God for the opportunity. If you see the cards in front of you on your desks, most of the times when we came together for other prayer breakfast times, during these times of morning prayers, there were lists of prayer and intercession that we do on behalf of the continent. But this year, if you notice, there is only one: thanksgiving, gratitude. And I know what comes to our minds for most of us when we think of gratitude and to be thankful, especially when it comes to Africa. You know, like Thanksgiving for Africa, in Africa, with all these problems that are surrounding us and the suffering around us. Because Thanksgiving, I think, for me, has to do with what we see. It's to see, it's to appreciate, it's to be thankful for the things that we normally take for granted. Thanksgiving and gratefulness and gratitude is the result of seeing in a very special way. Just reminds me of the story of these two prisoners. I don't know if you know the story, but there were these two prisoners that were imprisoned in the same prison cell, a very narrow, dark prison cell that they were sharing, two of them. And their experience was the same. They were sharing everything together. They ate the same kind of food, and they had the same limited amount of break times that they go out and explore the outside world. I mean, their whole experience is the same. They even shared this, the prison cell that they were in didn't even have a window or any access to see the outside world. By God's grace, by chance, there was this tiny little nail hole at the door that they take turns every time. They give time for themselves, and they come into that narrow, tiny little nail hole to see the world outside. So they share everything. Even that is shared. But from time to time, the one prisoner was very much happy, grateful, energetic, healthy, vibrant, flourishing each time, physically, emotionally. He's just this happiest, dancing, singing kind of guy. But the other guy, sharing the same experience, was more and more, day by day, becoming this miserable, tired, sick, depressed, full of misery, scared kind of guy. So you see, even physically and emotionally, one is this vibrant, joyful guy, and the other guy is this miserable, sad, depressed guy. So one day, this miserable, depressed kind of guy just took the courage to ask this friend of his, and he asked him, we share everything together and we live in this same place, but you are flourishing and I'm not. I wonder what the difference is. And his friend looked around and he said, I don't know, we share everything together. I don't know. And after a while, he just told him, but I wonder what you see through this tiny little hole when your turn comes. And this guy just looked at him and he said, does it have to do with anything that I see? Maybe. What do you see when you have your turn to look through this little window? Well, the guy said, well, I see the field here, right here, in front of our door. I see every day fresh prisoners coming in, a fresh batch of prisoners coming in, tortured. I see the big, huge booths of these soldiers torturing additional prisoners. I see misery, I see suffering in this field, in this compound. And then he just wondered and asked his friend, what do you see through this little tiny nail hole? And the guy said, oh, I see these things, but I don't focus on them. And the guy said, what do you see? Oh, I look up. Each time I see, I look up. I look big. I look wide. And he said, I look at the sky. How spacious it is. I look at the trees. I look at the birds flying. Nighttime comes, I look at the stars. Beautiful stars. And I look at the butterflies. How colorful they are. I'm so thankful. And sometimes when I see the birds flying here and there, I always say, one day I'll be like them. One day I'll have the freedom. I have an appreciation of what is happening. Through the little window that I have, I see bigger than the compound near here. See, that is the difference. The difference is not where they are. The difference is what they see. See, gratitude is not something automatic that comes. We just have to be conscious people to see the bigger picture of what God is doing. It demands to be focused. It's an appreciation about the things that are happening that we take for granted. Many of the things that were mentioned. It depends on our focus. Gratitude is about what do you see in that little window? What do you see around us? You see, it also reminds me of the biblical story in the Old Testament. If you remember, the people of Israel came from slavery and they were making it to the promised land. And when they were in the desert, it's a story in Numbers chapter 13 and 14. The story goes that Moses somehow was counseled by God to select 12 spies, explorers, from each tribe of the people of Israel to go and explore the land that they are going to inherit. So 12 people went. I don't know if you remember the story, but they explored the promised land for 40 days together. I mean, they saw the same land. They were together for 40 days. Hey, you know the story. They enjoyed the blessing of the land. They even carried some of the fruit from the land, came back together. They saw the same thing, the same land, the same experience. They came back with totally two different opposing reports. You know the story, of course, but I call the 10 the unknown people. I mean, their names are listed, but if I ask you, you wouldn't remember even one of the names. I mean, we don't remember them. They are the people that came up with very discouraging reports. They saw, but they did not see the big picture. They reported that the people living there are so powerful. The land is so evil. It swallows everybody that's living in there. They weren't swallowed. They came back, but they said it's a very evil land. Cities are strong and fortified. We can't make it. We saw the descendants of Enoch, the Nephilim. All the people are so high, we look like grasshoppers. I was like, that was the report of these unknown people. But we remember these two. I mean, their names are equally listed, but we remember these two, Joshua and Caleb. They showed differently. They used the same opportunity, tiny little nail hole that they had, and they saw opportunities. They saw the grace of God. And they said, we can go, we can occupy the land. Our God is with us. You know, it's a good land. It's a beautiful land. The Lord is delighted with us. He's with us. He'll give us. The people there, those giant people, their protection is gone. Our God is with us. They will be like bread for us. I mean, what made these people to have different reports? The way they see. The way they see. Joshua and Caleb saw the promise of God, the goodness of God, the graciousness of God, the greatness of God and His promises. You see, complainers, grumblers, those people that see in a narrow way the sufferings and the immediate problems, those complainers and grumblers, they were just kept in the desert. Grumbling keeps us in the desert, makes us weak. But gratitude is an energy. Thanksgiving is an energy that takes us to the promised land. That's why Joshua and Caleb had the grace. They had the energy. There is no such positive advantage of complaining, grumbling. You know, we got to see God is, we somehow are living in this little prison, by the way. This world is a prison anyways. We got to use those opportunities to see the goodness of God around us. There is a similar story in the New Testament. There is this similar story in the New Testament where, if you remember, John the Baptist, this great guy that preached about the coming of the Messiah, he was actually the bulldozer that just paved the way for our Messiah to come in. He was saying, this is the Messiah. This is the deliverer. And remember in Matthew chapter 11, he himself was put in a little prison cell. He was complaining. He was confused. What is going on? He just looked at the prison. He was like, what is going on? If you remember, he sent some of his disciples to complain. Remember when they arrived? They said, we have a message from John the Baptist. What is the message? Are you the one to come? What is going on? Are you the one to come, or shall we wait for another to come? What was Jesus' answer? He didn't answer it directly. He said, what do you see? What do you see? Go and tell him what you see. Gratitude is about seeing the bigger picture and seeing what God is doing in the bigger picture. Bigger spectrum. To see the goodness of God. Gratitude and seeing the bigger picture is not an ignorance and even a negligence of the suffering around us. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about this wishful thinking, positive thinking, and thinking positive things alone. That's not what I'm talking about. It's not an ignorance or negligence of the suffering around. It's actually seeing the bigger reality, being thankful, having the energy to solve the immediate problems, to solve the immediate sufferings. Gratitude is energy to solve our issues. Not complaining, but gratitude and thanksgiving. There is this grace in the word gratitude, which is power and energy to live, to be motivated, to solve immediate problems. Now, I don't have time to go and list all the goodness of God around us here in Africa. But somehow, one of the deceptions of the enemy that has kept us as Africans to be unmotivated about stuff is that somehow that deception that everything in Africa is bad. Everything in Africa is so wrong. And unfortunately, the news media and the social media somehow feeds that up. Everything going around in Africa is so bad, and suffering, and evil, and starvation. So, everyone wants to escape from this troubled land, go to places where the grass is more greener. Seems to be blinding us not to see our potential. Seems to be blinding us the goodness of God surrounding us. And you see, everything in Africa is not bad, and everything is not in Canada is not perfect. We all are living in a prison. What do you see? What do we see? And if we see around, we are surrounded by the goodness of God. We're surrounded by the goodness of God. The last 4 or 5 years in Africa, with the breaking of the COVID-19 pandemic, I don't know if we forget that's a problem. I don't know if you remember the statistics and the numbers and the predictions. So all Africa will be a death land. I remember the statistics and the numbers about Ethiopia. Bodies will be on the streets. And there will not be enough remaining people to bury the bodies of these people. That didn't happen. The grace of God. The grace of God. Now, there are many things that we can be grateful about. Many of the peaceful elections that we are enjoying in many of the African countries. In Ethiopia, you can choose what you focus on. Of course, we have troubles and problems, but we have the move of God around. And we have the grace of God surrounding us. Of course, we've gone through the last couple of years, we went through this ugly, terrible civil war that claimed the lives of, I don't know how many. Who knows how many they are? Hundreds of thousands of lives. Very sad. But the grace of God. I did not see miraculous peace coming in. It wasn't easy to see from the past. When we see it now, we say, oh, that's fine. But it's huge. It's huge. Peace was attained miraculously by the leadership of wise leaders like His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo and many of our leaders. It was attained. It wasn't attained somewhere in Geneva or New York. And it happened here at home in Pretoria, South Africa. African solutions for African problems. I mean, God is with us. God has favored us. There is a lot of goodness that we can enjoy and be grateful. It's gratefulness that motivates us to solve our problems, not grumbling. Grumbling keeps us in the desert. Complaining keeps us in the desert. But thankfulness, gratitude, gives us the energy to deal with our own problems. The last few weeks, we have had dark national crisis coming into our nation that kept us into our knees. Very sad stories. It wasn't just about the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. It was a national issue. It was a national burden. All of us were burdened. And we were in prayer. And we just thought things were getting darker. But thank God, through the wise leadership of our spiritual leaders, through the wise leadership of our political leaders, seems to be hope and light and shining and peace and friendship and coming together and unity. That's the grace of God. That's the grace of God. By the grace of God. My friends, I just would like to encourage us beyond just thinking about it in the prayer breakfast. The Bible tells us in everything to be thankful. In everything to be grateful. To people, to God, to what He's doing, to what He has already done through Christ Jesus on the cross, the love of God. We have a lot of things to be grateful for. What do you see? Complaining and grumbling on the immediate problems keeps us weak and keeps us in the wilderness. Gratitude is an energy to take us to the promised land.